Let's move on to the next topic. We're going to talk about Brennan Johnson. I think everyone has been guilty, including myself and Sim, of criticising Brennan Johnson since he's come to Spurs. He doesn't take on his man enough. He doesn't show himself enough in games. But if you look at these last two games, he's come on, changed the game against Crystal Palace, had a top performance at Villa Park as well. Is Brennan Johnson now proving those doubters wrong, Brian?
He's starting to. He's definitely starting to. You can't go from just to a heart or the bit part of Crystal Palace and a full game of Villa go, right, that's it, it's the change. He's certainly showing that he's starting to get to grips with what is requested of him at Tottenham Hotspur. He's started to gain a bit more confidence. Listen, when we bought him, I didn't understand the transfer to begin with. I didn't understand why we were going for him. I didn't understand the value, but that's not Brennan's fault. I didn't understand any of it. But then when I started speaking, there's someone on Tottenham Tour regular in the comments that is Welsh and was speaking that he will grow into this role. He's perfect for Ange's system. You got to look at it. When he was at Notts Forest, he was the star that kept them up last season. And he was the maverick that get the ball to him and let him do what he does. He came to Tottenham. It's not the same standards, unfortunately, for Forest fans, if they even think so. It's a different level of player that is required and a certain way of playing. And when he came in, for me, he didn't get a pre-season under Ange, which we all know, even back at Poch, how important it is to get your pre-season in, get up to the management's fitness requirements, understand the way he plays, what is required of you. He then came on as a sub against Sheffield United, had an assist ruled out for a foul, had a goal disallowed for offside. He had an impact. What I believe Brennan Johnson came for this year, to have an impact off the bench. We went to the filth towards the North London derby, and he got injured. He had a couple of injuries, playing on the left rather than the right. And he's severely lacking confidence. And one of the things we wanted to see, he was blessed with pace, is him get on the ball and take his man on. And he weren't doing it. He just weren't doing it. Then he got the normal abuse on social media that the fans or so-called fans like to give to people personally. But in the last two games, you've definitely seen an improvement. And listen, love him, hate him, think he's worth it, think he'll be a star, which I think this time next year, he's a first-team starter. No, like he walks into the first team. I really think he is going to improve. All you can ask for is that you contribute every game. And in the he made a huge difference against Palace. Monumental difference against Palace. And for me, I gave him man of the match for Villa for me. I think he was one of the only bright sparks in the first half, and he kept going. One of the things that I've been moaning about him was his tracking back has been lacking. He hasn't got back to help like a Kulusevski does. And he did that. And he kept Matty Cash quiet. People think for him to have a good game, all he's got to do is run past the player, goal and assist. That's the main thing. That's what he's employed to do. You have other jobs to do to help the team. And he certainly did that against Aston Villa. I think it was his best game, hands down. And now you're going to start seeing the evolution of Brennan Johnson in the Spurs shirt. And I think this time next year, he's a first-teamer, without foul.
Ash, what's your take on it? Do you think he is proving his doubters wrong, or has he still got a long way to go?
I think for some fans, he's still got a long way to go. I look at other players that, have been in the Premier League, because people say, oh, he's been in the Premier League, he's got no excuse. So I look at someone like Bailey, who's having an amazing season at Aston Villa. In his first season, he wasn't pulling up any trees, in my opinion. I know he was doing well in the Bundesliga, which is a different league altogether. But his first season, I remember I had high hopes for him myself. And I remember I was with the barbers for the Jamaicans. I was like, yo, watch this brother Bailey. He's going to be mad. Gunshot Bailey, watch. And then 2-2s now, he just flopped. I was like, I thought I got it wrong. I was like, oh, maybe I got my talent ID wrong. And then Emre obviously has come in, and the guy's doing wonders this season. He's got 8 goals and 8 assists. Now, I'm not saying the same is going to happen for Johnson, but people are saying, let baby boy Johnson land. Let him land. Let him land.
Just like your mic.
Just like my mic's called that. Whoa there, buddy. So, yeah, basically, I feel like I agree with Brian. When he first came on as an impact sub against Sheffield United, I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Like, he looks like he's got something in him. Because Besuma did the ball over the top, puts it in the back of the net against Arsenal. Emirates, it was intimidating, environment, but he stood up to it. So he showed that he's got something about him. Got injured, and then I thought he was all right against Chelsea before obviously our team capitulated and the injuries and the sending offs happened. I thought he turned up on the left-hand side against Chelsea. A lot of people are arguing whether his best side is on his left side or on the right side. He played on the right side for Nottingham Forest, but also at Forest, he played up front. And that was my argument as well. I thought when he played as a striker at times with what's his face playing behind him. I forgot his name.
Gibbs White.
Gibbs White, yeah, Gibbs White was playing. Morgan Gibbs White was playing behind him, and those two would play like it would interchange at times. And I thought, okay, he can play across the front three. Maybe we're not utilizing Johnson at the moment, but I think it's just a case of him understanding Ange Ball, understanding the tactics. Again, people have mentioned his fitness quite heavily, and I felt against Aston Villa, his fitness was fine. It wasn't an issue. Do you know what I mean? So is it a case of give this guy time, let him have a season? At the moment, statistically, the numbers don't look too bad. If we're looking at some of the top players or players that we're linked with, in terms of like goals and assists, GA, I think it's like either 10 or 11 GA for the season so far, with 10 games to go. So he's got the potential to finish on like, I don't know, maybe 15 to 13 goals, across the season. So I'm not going to be too mad if that's his first season and he progresses from there. But it's a lot of ifs. For me, on that left-hand side, he looked a lot more comfortable because he was able to cut on his right foot. He was able to dribble and come inside, and Cash couldn't really handle that. Do you know what I mean? On the outside, when he plays on the right, I don't feel like he always takes his man on. I know when he came off the bench, he did. But in a full 90 minutes, I think that's where people are critiquing him. He needs to take his man on and go on the outside. And that's what we're looking for. We want Johnson to be unpredictable, use that pace, inside, outside. And then also, in terms of transitioning, Kulusevski, I felt, is a little bit better in that hold-up play. In terms of when you get the ball into Kulusevski, Johnson was a bit weak against Wolves. Like, you put the ball into him, or even against Everton, I noticed it as well. You put the ball into him and he kept losing it and kept collapsing. But I thought he was a lot better against Aston Villa. Again, now, when I'm talking about mentality-wise, that was something we used to beat the stick with him as well. We were saying, is he a mummy's boy? He's got his mum on his phone. Looks like a bit of a sweet boy, whatever. Like, so for me, against Villa, he showed that he had a bit of that grit and determination. The way he riled up after his boy Udogie fell to his knees. He's like, no, I'm not having it. Rare. Kind of like we got into his head, some of us fans. Like, we got into his head. And you know what? Sometimes as a top player, you need to have thick skin. He's a 22-year-old boy, but I think he's turning into a 22-year-old man. And he needs this type of season where sometimes we calm down on him hard to make him a man that we need him to be for next season. That's how I see it personally. I think technique-wise, he has got it. He just needs to believe in himself. It's just a bit of a confidence issue thing. The goal he took as well against Forest, people were like, he's a tap-in merchant. But that goal for me, he took that goal very well. I know it was a side foot, but he placed it in the top corner so the keeper couldn't get it. Martinez is quite an imposing keeper, he's quite large. But yeah, for me, he put that top bins. I was like, yeah, you know what? This kid's got more to come from him.
Yeah. Look, I think for me, I was massively in favour of the signing when we did sign him in the summer. I liked it. I liked what he showed at Forest. I thought he could really, add to what Ange Postecoglou was trying to do here. And I was quite disappointed with the form that he's been on, with the form that he's showing. And I was heavily critical of what he's been showing in the Spurs shirt, albeit his numbers have been very good. Like you said, 10 goal contributions this season is remarkable for the form he's actually showed. But I do think these last two games have been a massive step in the right direction, and maybe we're starting to see him get fully into grips of what Ange Postecoglou wants to do tactically. Maybe he's gained more confidence as well, game by game. But I do think that maybe the goal contributions, which he has shown, has been a bit of an overperformance of his performance levels of what he has shown for the majority of the season. But I think when you're looking at these last two games, you can't be disappointed. You've got to be proud and you've got to be happy with the way things are going with Brennan Johnson, because all we can ask for is progression, improvements, and I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. So I got to give massive credit for Brennan Johnson for these last two games. But having said that, I think when you're looking at his performances on the season as a whole, I don't think they have been good enough as of yet. But I'm excited to see what's to come for Brennan, that's for sure. What do you think, Sim?
Yeah, look, he's a young player. We knew it was going to take time for him to kind of fully adjust to Ange Postecoglou. And as well, he's only had one season in the Premier League before this. He's still only 22, coming with a big price tag, a lot of expectation. And I think at the beginning, even though I thought he had a fairly decent start, you know, he clearly went through some difficult moments in terms of finding form, finding confidence, and I felt the performances definitely did suffer for that. He probably played more than he should have played as well due to injuries, that he probably was in the team more than we expected him to be, and I think that all contributed to maybe there were times where he did lose his form. But I think for me, since the turn of the year, he's been pretty good. I think he's been a really great impact sub. On a few occasions, he's come on and really helped turn the game and really impacted games positively. I think since the turn of the year in the Premier League, it's 6 goal contributions in 8 games. I think in his last 6 games, it's 5 goal contributions in 6 games. So I think he's really starting to get those regular contributions now. And for a young player, I don't know how much more you can ask for in terms of that. I think sometimes we judge him harshly because you want a winger to be constantly involved and constantly taking on your man. But, you know, when you're looking at strikers, you know, they can have a bad game, but they get a goal, and all of a sudden, you know, that's, you know, people say that's his job. You know, you get that one goal, doesn't matter how you've played, and that's all that matters. I feel like Brennan Johnson, even though he has games where he contributes, and if he doesn't have the best game, he still gets judged harshly, maybe because of his price tag. But I feel like, yes, we want his performances to improve, but all you can ask for is I think the fact that sometimes he's not having a great game and he still gets a goal contribution shows his quality more than anything. That shows that he's got quality about him, that he can still make decisive differences, even in moments where he's not having his best time. And that goes to show maybe his mentality. And I think that goes to show that we do have a player with quality, maybe ready to come through. And the fact that he's got 10 goal contributions, I think if you look at the minutes that he's played as well, I think it averages out to about a goal contribution every 1.5 games. So, I mean, as a young player who's new to the team and maybe has had difficult circumstances this season, I think you can't ask for too much more than that. And I think that is a pretty positive start. I think we can all be critical of things that he should be doing, but maybe we need to give him a bit more praise about things he does do. And I think, especially recently, he definitely deserves a lot of credit for starting to step up for the team. And as well, the game yesterday was a massive step forward, considering it was the first time really he started on the left-hand side, and he was in the team from the beginning, and he had a real positive contribution from that position where he looked a constant threat throughout the whole 90 minutes coming from that side. So that was a real big step in the right direction, and I think fans need to be able to give him credit for how he has contributed, rather than constantly bashing him and demanding more from him when he has moments where he's not at his best. Because I think that when you look at his overall contribution to the attacking side, given the minutes he's played and how he's been contributing, I think he's doing a good job. I really do, and I'm really happy for him. And I think he's going from strength to strength. And I'm really hoping he can take this momentum he's built over the last few games into the last 10 games and really have a good end to the season.
Just to
Go on.
add to that as well. Sorry, before, I think to really win the fans over, and I think this was a perfect game for him because it was a top 4 battle. Let's not get it twisted. This was a massive game. Don't underestimate that. And he turned up. I think that was massive for his own confidence. But he needs to produce that again against another top 6 team. Because it's easy to do against your lower teams. But when you're playing against your Chelseas, we need him to turn up against like a Chelsea or an Arsenal. If he scores against a Chelsea or an Arsenal, or he contributes against City or somehow, then I think that's how you win the core, like the hardcore fans, where they're being ultra critical. You can't really come back if you get a goal and assist in those type of games when we need you, because that's where we're going to start moving up the table. It's not so much the smaller games, the bigger games where we need them to turn up.
Yeah, it's also, but not just that. I feel like he needs to go on a run now where he, like, look at these 4 games that we got coming up, right? We've got 4 winnable games, or 4 teams that are in the bottom half of the league. No Chelsea in there, no Arsenal in there. He needs to go on this run now in these next 4 games and contribute consistently, not just in goals and assists, but on a performance level. He needs to produce that in the next 4 games, in my opinion. And I think if he does that, the narrative within the fan base will change dramatically on Brennan Johnson. But Brian, I was going to ask you, do you agree with what Sim's saying, or do you feel like maybe these goal contributions have maybe masked his performance levels?
Now, do you know what? There's an added element I want to put into this. I think a lot of the reason with the fans and the way he was being perceived is because of that massive injury crisis we had no option. He had to play, whether it be on the left or the right. There were no options whatsoever. You're playing. Then think it was a good signing or not, Timo Werner came in. It was like, right, there's the guy with all the experience. There's the guy that's been there, done that, whether it be a success in the Premier League, which obviously it wasn't. He had been a success in Germany, but it's someone that could step in and deal with it, which gave him the option to take him out of the spotlight. And this turn in form has come since he got the winner at Brighton in the last minute, when he came off the bench, which is what, if you look at all the attributes he has, this searing pace and whatever, you bring him on when other teams are tired, he should be able to run rings around them and be able to have an impact, which he did. Whether it was a last-minute winner, and I honestly thought, and I'll be honest here, when that ball came across him against Brighton and I saw it was him, I literally had my heart in my mouth thinking it was going to go over. And then when I saw it travelling up to the roof of the net, I was like, hit the back of the net. Listen,
Brian, was that a Pedro Porro starting against Manchester United moment?
Yeah, not as bad. Not as bad. And I was, oh my God, how wrong was I there? Thank God. Or maybe it's me. Maybe if I think these players are going to miss and do things bad, they turn into superstars. But he came off the bench, got that goal against Palace. Like we said, I think we were just overplaying him because we had no other options. We obviously know that he weren't going to play Donnelly. He weren't going to try and play some of the youth. It was Richarlison on the left and Son in the middle. Was it? Then obviously Son went away to Richarlison. Johnson just had to play because there was no alternative. And I think because there was the price tag, because obviously we weren't doing so well during that time with all the injuries, you got to remember that kind of partnership he had with Richarlison, where he did the identical assist. I think it was for the Newcastle game and the Everton game, that whipped in ball and then Richarlison just nipped in at the near post. I think he has done. Obviously, we want him to do better. And obviously, when you hear £50 million and at Tottenham Hotspur, that's a huge transfer fee for what we do. We're not one of these 80, 100, 120 and whatever. We expect a certain standard at that level. But you look at players that have taken time to settle into their club. I think what we're seeing from him is starting to show. And like you said, I think it was Sim or yourself, Ben, that said these next 4 games, all in London, whether people will start thinking right now he's starting, let's see if he can continue it. And this is you would say that as a cluster of four games where you think he could do some damage. And if he can you imagine if he goes and scores the winner away at West Ham? There you go. We spoke about Chelsea. Ash said Chelsea and Arsenal. You score a winner away at West Ham, especially at that ground, people are going to start taking notice. And I think he is going to end the season on a high, and Spurs are going to reap the benefits.